Hi there. Welcome to Side Streets, the Bowery Boys Patreon Extra show. This is Greg Young.
And this is Tom Myers. And Greg, we have a lot to discuss on this week's show. But first of all, we are just hot off the presses with this amazing show you did on the history of the Ramones and CBGB.
Oh my gosh.
Nice job on that.
I can't believe that show happened. It kind of, let me explain. I'm going to say this, and a lot of the audience is going to groan, because that show, it was supposed to be a different show. So I kind of changed it kind of quickly for a specific reason. I was originally going to do a show, and I know people are going to want to hear this. This is why I say this, about like amusement parks, like forgotten amusement parks of New York City, kind of a sundry show where we celebrate, in particular, Rockaway Playland and Freedomland and places like that. Felt like a nice summertime show.
And by the way, that is an oft-recommended show.
Yeah, no,
right?
It is.
People write in because they have these fabulous recollections of these small, parks of yesteryear that no longer exist.
And I've wanted an excuse really to go back and talk about the Rockaway, so it was going to be a little bit of that too. And so that's what I was planning on doing. And then a few weeks ago, sort of late June, I got an email from sort of a PR company who was, the guy was a listener, but he was also kind of representing the Ramones estate. And they were like, and he was like, hey, I just, it was a totally casual email that I'm sure he thought that would not even be answered because, he just probably sends out these inquiries. But he was like, hey, just thought I would let you know that the 50th anniversary of the Ramones at CBGB was next month, and the city, there's going to be a lot of events surrounding it. I don't think I'm supposed to say what they are yet, but he's like, just wondering if you were interested. And it just caught me at the right moment because I was having, I guess, some sort of problem in my research with the amusement park. And I was like, you know what? Let's switch. Let me do it. And so I talked to him on the phone like the next day, and I was like, I'll do it if you help me get some of these interviews, because it was like a little bit faster. It's not like, wasn't like an ideal time period. Switching out candidates at the last minute can sometimes bring reward, as we've learned. And
it can bring a burst of new energy, or right, it could fall on its face. Who knows? And by the way, switching up subjects like that, I mean, you were going from, a multi-part series about Dutch New Amsterdam and New Netherlands.
Right.
And a travelogue through the Netherlands, really, to a radically different topic. And I wonder if that also was part of the appeal of, switching over to a punk rock group.
Well, so I knew there was for a summer show, I think there needed to be, I don't know what you would call it, a throat clearing where it's like, or a new chapter, right? But there needed to be kind of a different tone to the next show. So anyway, got the
palate cleanser.
A palate cleanser, right? But not that
I think we clear the palate. We don't clear the throat. Well, I guess you can clear a throat. It's just more guttural or
look. We had
messy.
We had an abundance, a Dutch cuisine for many, many weeks, and so now it's like, let's go into the gutter for an episode. So it was partially thanks to him. We were both able to kind of double up efforts. And that's why there are 4 people interviewed on that show, including Ann McDermott. I mean, this was a nice surprise. Ann McDermott, who is a new Bowery Boys Walks tour guide doing the Dutch New Amsterdam tour. But
absolutely,
perchance,
and I've been talking to her about that. We've been, chatting about. In fact, we had a long during the rollout of the shows about Amsterdam. New Amsterdam. We had a call specifically about busting some of the myths surrounding, Dutch New Amsterdam. So I'm talking to her about that at the same time that you're talking to her.
It's such a weird thing because she actually specializes in music walking tours. She has a private company, but then for Bowery Boys Walks, she's doing this particular tour, and it's amazing, I've heard. So anyway, I got in touch with her, and once I heard her story, so she gave me some bullet points. I was like, oh my gosh, I have to meet her. She has to be on the show at the site. So one afternoon, and Craig Nelson, Bowery Boys Walks manager extraordinaire, also met us to sort of take some photos. We went behind CBGB. Now, do you remember that little extra place? I think there was even like a Mexican restaurant there like 10 years ago, like or something, right? There was that building on the east side is new. And then but on the west side of the alley is the back of CBGB and a couple other buildings. So we recorded there, had a great, wonderful time. She shared her stories of both going to CBGB, but all these different places that she went. So she had like a great inspiration for me on that show.
And you picked that spot on extra, what is it? Extra lane? Extra street?
Place. I know. Extra place.
You picked that spot because it was there that their album cover was shot.
Yes. There's actually 2 places in the East Village about 2 blocks away from each other that are sites where they've had record covers taken. In fact, the most famous one, the most iconic one, is actually over on, 2nd and 2nd. It's like a little tiny garden named Albert's Garden. And they had their very first album cover there. And it's considered one of the most influential album covers because it's kind of like grimy. It's like it's beaten up and not polished. And so that was actually like it influenced a lot. The funny part about that is it is a super peaceful garden. And tourists come from all over the world and they come with their Ramones shirts or whatever and they pose there. But it's a really quiet place. I mean, it's a place of contemplation. And so the people who run it are like, we're not going to have some podcasters there. So couldn't do that.
Right, sure.
But
did you think about taking the episode inside the John Vervato shop? Did you ever think about sort of sneaking inside?
I did think about it. Anne, it's funny because Anne told me, she's like, I can't go in there because they know who I am and they'll throw me out. Because like when you get, but then I did eventually go in. I did think about briefly like turning on the mics and whatever and just talking to myself really loudly, but ended up not doing that. But I will say this, I did go in a couple days after that. And I mean, I must say like it is a tribute to CBGB. The bar is still there. It's where you check. It's where the registers are. It's where they fold the clothes.
Yeah.
And then they have some of the walls are even preserved from the original club. I mean, it's like high-end retail. I mean, like, love the clothes. I can't really afford them, but like I think it's great style. But you know, I mean, it's great. It's actually it's remarkable to go inside there.
I thought it was very well done, by the way, how you handled the transition and the transition to an upscale clothing shop, and you kind of balanced it out because I thought, oh, are you going to slam the current state of the building? Are you going, the current occupant? But no, I mean, it's it didn't wipe away its history at the same time. And it is, in some ways, a tribute. It's a very expensive tribute, but they could have just demolished it. It wasn't like it was, a landmark protected building.
No, well,
right?
I mean, it's protected by the, I think it is now. It's definitely like it's on the National Register, like the building itself. But but the thing is like that hasn't stopped anyone. But in context, like back in 2008, I think a lot of people complained, but that was a different world. Like now, like the fact that like, a place moved in is honoring the history is almost foreign compared to what happens today when developers go in and just clear a block, and like completely erase things. So I think when you look back on it, it's like, well, maybe we were a little too hard on them, and like there's like a lot of people who, it's like it really is attached to a lot of people's memories, which is what was profound in doing this show, and it brought people back. We got some surprising emails from just people. I was like, I mean, I couldn't believe Michael Bloomberg actually fought to keep it open because he was mayor at the time, and had spoke from experience.
I'm sorry, what was the Bloomberg quote or that you read about? Like, you had to stop and say that was an actual quote.
Yeah, he was just no, it's like, we used to go there on Friday nights, and we'll never forget this place or something. So I can't remember, but it was something like that, and it was like, oh, yeah. I mean, I guess maybe 18-year-old Michael Bloomberg must
It was
obviously
like
had
partying
love
with
of
the
it.
Ramones.
Yes.
Yeah, and like
But
dancing to Debbie Harry.
I know. I
Amazing.
mean, Tom, can you believe that connection? I mean, the thing is that
No,
I know that. I mean, you and I have been lifelong Blondie,
Debbie
Deborah
Harry
Harry
fans. Yes.
and so it was exciting to see where they fit into this story because the fact that they're opening for the Ramones in these very first months is extraordinary. Because of course, then Blondie would become. We know that because they would be kind of, in a way, musical chameleons. They would like bring in a bunch of styles. Like they would have reggae, they would have disco, they would have rap.
Yeah.
You know, like they would always be themselves, but bring in other things. Where the Ramones are the opposite. They're the same thing. You know, so it sort of was fun to imagine them. It was a great show to like imagine because I had been to CBGB in the end.
Right.
There's much lamenting in the show also about like, well, it actually got really bad at the end. And, you know, probably that's not fair, but I mean, it's from other people's voices saying that. But like, it's maybe not a fair necessarily, but it is true that like it became such an artifact of time. And it does make you think about all of the clubs and bars that we used to go to, right? I mean, think of all the,
how
you know,
some of those. I'm sorry, and how we often talk about like, you know, clubbing in the 90s at places and lamenting the fact that they're no longer around, you know, like the Limelight and the Tunnel and the Roxy and the Sound Factory, etc. But many of those places were still clubbing. The beat still went on for many years after we stopped clubbing there, right? And they kind of changed a little, but some people still had their magic moments there, even though we consider them to be passé. Right? Like that ship has sailed. And now, of course, all those places are gone. And it's just kind of like, wow. I mean, that era is completely over. So, yeah, I see some parallels there. By the way, it was interesting when you were making that episode. I was on vacation with my family in Ohio on Lake Erie, where we recorded the last, I recorded the last Side Streets with you. And I headed off to Cleveland and went for the first time in my life, I'm embarrassed to say, to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. I'd never been there. And when I entered downstairs and started the sort of main exhibit, you walk right in and they had a whole thing about the Ramones right there, along with, and the Beastie Boys and some others, along with a CBGB awning sticking out of the wall there. The original awning that was over the door, over the sidewalk on the Bowery. So we were both so like plugged into CBGB at the very same moment. Well, you know? And Cleveland.
I've always wanted to go. So did you like, we talked, I forgot, we talked a little bit about this. You have mixed feelings about the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Well, I thought it was, I mean, look, you and I love a Hall of Fame. We love the Hall of Fame in the Bronx.
All the Halls of Fame.
All the Halls of Fames. We love. I mean, it's just fun because it's kind of like a game show. Like, who's going to make it, right, into the Hall of Fame? Who deserves to be this year's inductees? And it's fun to march through time. The Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, you know, it left Guillaume and I, my husband and I, sort of in this very, you know, passionate argument following our visit there about like, what was rock and roll? Now, maybe in that respect, it was a huge success because that is literally a topic that we have never argued about before. You know, like, what is rock?
What is rock and roll?
What is rock and roll? And we were just like, well, why wasn't this included, or why was this included? And, you know, why was Lisa Loeb given this whole thing, you know, when we remember that one song, but Madonna only has this little bit over here. So, you know, why were certain choices made to include certain people and not others? And what is rock in the first place, you know? There's no Beach Boys. There's no disco. You know. So, because it's not rock. So I think in my mind, I was expecting it to be a sort of like American Music Hall of Fame, you know, popular American Music Hall of Fame. And instead it's quite literally like a rock and roll Hall of Fame that reflects, you know, the definition of rock and roll as defined by its founders, I believe, and the people who lord over it. So there are some interesting choices there. Maybe I'll just stop right there because I'm sure people are very passionate about the topic, and I don't pretend to know that much about it.
Well,
so I would just say that,
yeah, okay.
Yes.
As an aside, I must say, if you are into music and you are into Halls of Fame, and I've never been to that one, but I have been on 3 different occasions in Nashville to the Country Music Hall of Fame, which is actually, well, it's a lot more defined. Like, I had few
easier to define.
Few objections. Like, they have like people like Johnny Cash who are rock, but also country. They have people on the side. They have folk people, but like that all kind of makes sense. It's sort of like they're wrapping their arms around a larger concept, which seems like they're having a more difficult time with rock music.
What about pop? I mean, what about country stars who then go pop? What do they do with Dolly? Well, I guess Dolly gets her whole
Dolly's in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. There's certain artists that are just like, let's put them everywhere. She might be, if there was a Classical Music Hall of Fame, maybe they'd put her in that. I don't know. But I haven't been in recent years, but I assume people like Taylor Swift are in there. I mean, like, there are country stars, like in the 80s, you had this, especially the phenomenon of country pop artists. And then like in the 90s, you had artists that were like a little like Billy Ray Cyrus, I guess. That was just like a country song that was popular in the pop world, as opposed to
what about your girl, Amy Grant? She would be Christian Music Hall of Fame.
Well, right. But I think, I don't remember. I would put like her first couple, like contemporary Christian does branch out of country. Oh, I wonder if there's any...
This is a very interesting side street, by the way. We need to say, this side street, ladies and gentlemen, is West 45th Street or 44th. What was BMG Music? Where were you? What was that address when you were at Sony?
Well, it was... when I worked at BMG in the Bertelsmann building in Times Square, that was where my first office was. Yeah. And then when they got bought by Sony, I worked up in the Philip Johnson building up on Madison and 56, right next to the Trump Tower, like literally next door. So that's so that I'm plunging all my music experience. I just had to add before moving on that there is also, since we were talking about Amy Grant, Christian music, there was also Christian rock music. So I wonder if any of that made the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. There's a couple significant artists.
For us to check out. I will tell you, bringing it back to New York, once when I was flying from LaGuardia to Cleveland, this is probably in 2008, let's just say I was just flying home for a quick weekend to be with my parents. I was on a small flight, and there were several people going to Cleveland because there was an induction ceremony at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Oh.
Some famous musicians, specifically, Greg, Paul Schaefer and David Letterman's late night band. They were like the only ones on this tiny little United, or maybe it was still Continental flight. It was like one of those with just one seat, if I recall. I was like on, one on this side and 2 on that side. And Paul Schaefer was in front of me on this little tiny flight. And I was just so gobsmacked and starstruck.
I know, yeah.
I've been a fan for decades of that man and his comedic musicality. Well, he was in front of me, like sipping a Sprite.
I'm so glad he's being honored by this august body.
We'll have to look it up to see like what he was doing there and what year that was. We can figure that out. But like the whole band was there. On that little flight. It was great.
I need to tell you about something that I did last week because it relates to a mutual friend of ours, but relates to our larger subject here of music. So Tom and I have, like, one of our best friends is this woman named Nancy Schwartzman. And she is a documentary film producer, absolutely just a talent.
Director.
She's a director, producer, right. She's made 3 films. Victim, Suspect, Roll Red Roll.
Roll Red Roll.
And The Line. But she now
And the XOXO SMS.
Oh my gosh, yes. That was a short film, but it's a film nonetheless. It's actually really good. Right, I forgot that one. So then she has a new series on Freeform/Hulu called Sasha Reed and the Midnight Order, which is a docu-series about sort of a all women crime fighters who are investigating cold cases about serial killers in Canada. So very well done series. But last week, I met up with Nancy and her coterie of like LA people and some New York folk to be in Times Square to see a billboard. Now, she was on like it was one of those digital billboards. And so we were there to celebrate her. But then after that, we went to have drinks at the Hard Rock Cafe. Now,
oh my gosh!
But the
old Paramount Theater.
Well, that's the old Hard Rock. So I didn't realize that they had. Oh. I guess I realized it was no longer in the Paramount. But what I didn't realize is they moved and changed their whole shtick. They're now up on. It's in the 50s.
Christian rock now.
No, it's now more like an elegant cocktail. Like it's a glamorous scene. It's not as it's not as cheesy. I mean, we all like a Hard Rock. Remember Planet Hollywood? Anyway, that's another story. But so it's now like more in a yes. I can't remember if it's in the 50s. It's definitely like in between 7th and 6th Avenue. And you walk in, it's like gold chandeliers and everything. And like banquettes for cocktails. Okay, so that's definitely not what I was familiar with. And they even have like a rooftop bar that's just absolutely stunning. But we sat down and we toasted her success. And then I look over and what is hovering over me but Joey Ramone's leather jacket. And I almost felt at that moment that like it was literally his ghost shining down upon us, joining the party. And then once I saw that, I was like, oh my gosh. And then I sort of wandered around and saw other items that were kind of tangential to the show that at that moment, it was Thursday, so the show was about to come out. And I saw that it was like some instruments from Talking Heads. There was a costume from Kiss, who also makes a fun appearance in this week's show.
Absolutely. So like these are signs, Greg. These are signs that you were meant to do the show when you did the show, and that Joey Ramone, I'm hoping would be pleased, or the spirit was pleased. So. I mean, he was there, serenading you. What a cool story. And by the way, Nancy Schwartzman and I,
yes.
Since you brought her up and you brought up Hard Rock Cafe, she and I became friends in the mid-90s when we both studied abroad at Columbia. We were both at school there, and we went over to Paris and studied for the year and had such a great time. We will not get into those stories right now, but she was there when I got my job as a study abroad student at a very high-end Parisian restaurant on the Champs-Élysées. Mm-hmm. They wanted, they granted me this permission to wait tables as an American student. The name of the restaurant was, and still is in some quarters, Planet Hollywood. So yes, that is Planet Hollywood. Right. That's the punchline. I was working at Planet Hollywood in Paris.
Okay, so
and Nancy was there.
Okay, so I want you to save the rest of that story because we have an episode. So looking ahead, in a few weeks, that may be sort of like themed around Times Square. So perhaps we can do an entire sideshow on theme restaurants, and you can share that story in full. How about that?
That sounds like a great plan. I'm going to pause the Planet Hollywood story for right now.
Because you're all going to want to hear this one, trust me.
But I have taken us to Paris. And by the way, that is definitely something that has been on both of our minds just as we wind up this episode of Side Streets, taking us way off in a distant side street or a side rue or rue à côté.
And an arrondissement.
In an arrondissement not anywhere near where you are right now, in Paris, as all eyes have been over there. And it's just been such a fun thing to watch. I don't know how it is stateside, but being over here in Europe has just been, I was in France all last week with that side of my family, watching it every single day and with the kids in real time, and it's just been like such a thrill to be in and around Paris. I mean, the way that they built Paris up, the way that they're using the city to showcase these events is just so spectacular. And remember that New York was trying to win over the 2024. Remember that whole contest.
I mean,
it does give us ideas for the next time that New York decides to compete. I think we need to be more innovative about ways to actually bring the games itself out of the stadium and build temporary stadiums and places and ramps and, courses for bikes and for runners that take them all over the city. Because bringing the city into the Olympics, I mean, that has just been such a winning combination for me.
It does help that Paris has such not just an alluring romantic look, but also is pretty well known. A lot of the landmarks are well known. So in comparison, the next Olympics are going to be in Los Angeles. So we hope that that they'll be able to do stuff around the landmarks of Los Angeles, but they are a bit different. I mean, you could only have so many things gathered around the Hollywood sign and the observatory. I mean, and downtown.
Maybe cycling through Universal Studios. That would be cool.
Oh, sure. I mean, you could do things like that. I mean, I actually think that downtown Los Angeles is really cool. The last time I was there, I actually spent I got to know downtown. I guess you could have it by the Walt Disney, the Symphony Center, and there's like that funicular. I mean, there definitely are places. I don't know if obviously, the U.S. has, and especially L.A. has a different relationship with its automobiles and traffic. So I don't know, how you would do that. And maybe they can utilize the whole sort of Los Angeles metropolitan area for that, obviously. And so.
Let us not forget what La La Land did, the movie, in its opening scene. They did a whole bump, 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 ba-dum, bump, bump, opening scene, on the highways. So they celebrated the highways in a way. So maybe there's something that can be done there. We'll figure out who to talk to about that. But by the way, have you been, because I know we're watching different competitions, that's been an eye-opener. I've seen very few gymnastics. So
interesting.
All the things that you're probably watching all the time that America is so good at. France, I was seeing the things that France was competing in. So was the ping pong championship on your radar?
Well, here's the one thing, a big preface that you should know is, I mean, I hate to praise a major media corporation, but NBC and Peacock, which is how I'm watching it streaming, are doing a fantastic job at covering the Olympics. And
I have heard.
Specifically because through the interface, you can watch they give you a selection of these 4 events are happening. Choose one. Which one would you like to watch? And because it's only 6 or 7 hours ahead, I have been
6.
So while I was working on Ramones notes, I was watching Olympics. Because I was working in my living room. I was like, I'll just have this on. So as a result, I've actually been watching a lot more events than I would have if I had just watched the prime time. And I still watch the prime time, but it's basically just reruns of things that already happened, sort of packaged.
Are they packaging? Yeah, they're packaging the prime time to be kind of a best of American events, I guess.
I mean, it depends. It is a very America forward, and I understand it's a way to edit, obviously, because it's sort of a way to focus on certain things, and obviously if it's mostly an American audience, that might be a good idea. But they let in, if there's an undeniable athlete in a particular thing, they will.
I'm
focus
guessing
on them.
Leon Marchand, the great swimmer.
He's gotten a lot of prime time. He's definitely a big one. Femke Bol.
He also trains in the U.S. and speaks fluent English.
The Dutch Femke Bol, the track runner. It was the Dutch beat the U.S. in the 4x4 mixed relay. That was on prime time. I mean,
that didn't play over here.
The other thing, which I don't think that you're getting, which is incredibly charming, is this whole phenomenon with Snoop Dogg. And so he's sort of I guess...
I've seen him a little bit in the bleachers when there's an American event.
The only way I can describe it, he's sort of a mascot, because what they're basically having him do is just go to all the events. He's like a cheerleader, an ambassador in a weird way, but honestly,
that's great.
He is charming. And he went to equestrian with Martha Stewart. He usually has a person. Yeah. So it's really, really fun to watch. The gymnastics. I love the guy I mean, America's Sweetheart is the Pommelhurst guy. Stephen Nodorosik. You have to kind of look up him.
I'm writing down these names because it's like a whole different list of sweethearts over on this side. So I will check him out if you check out the French ping pong champion.
Okay.
You got that?
Yes. French ping pong
You will love it.
champ.
You will be charmed.
Okay. And so that has been exciting. And I guess this is an extended layup for the fact that our next show although it will come out, our show comes out actually
just after
a little after the Olympics,
the closing ceremonies,
right?
Yes,
but
it'll still be in our minds.
But actually, that's okay because in a way, it's a little bit about celebrating the Olympics or celebrating things. Yeah. Should we just spill the subject? Can't we?
Sure.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're willing, it's about celebrations in general, and specifically about one very New York-centric way of celebrating. And how is that, Greg?
That is the ticker tape parade. So it is.
That's right.
We're kind of going inside the kind of evolution, the origin, the evolution, like what that means, why it's different. Other cities have them, but why it's a little different in New York, and also
what makes it quintessentially New York. Yeah.
Yeah, and then
aside from the fact that it started here.
Yeah. So, but it's a really fun show already.
We can't wait to roll the tape.
So, but it has some Olympic tie-ins. So we thought that would be a good subject, a good breezy subject for the summer. So I think.
Speaking of breezy subjects, I think that wraps it up. Huh? This has been a whirlwind side streets. Yes.
Well, one more thing, just sort of looking ahead, we have, as many of you know, because we gave you the links first. We do have a Halloween show. It's still very far in the future,
months.
But now it's closer.
2.5 months,
and people might be thinking a little bit more about Halloween, and so we suggest going and getting some seats. I noticed that for now we have 6 nights. One night is completely blocked off. Did you know that, Tom, for the public theater?
I looked at the seats today just to kind of see what was going on. That first 7 p.m. on the 29th is blocked off for now. But the other ones have wide availability, some more than others.
Well, I will say,
there are seats.
Yeah. I will say that if
29th, 30th, and 31st.
If October 30th, 7 p.m. is your preferred time, I'd get my tickets today, because that one, for some reason, is like, Andrew was explaining this to me. He's like, well, what happens is like when you start booking seats and you look at all the different dates and you see one that's like has some momentum, you tend to go to that one. So one day, that day in particular, I think it's just because it's early and it's not on Halloween. Like, I don't know I don't know why it's going, but if that date is interesting to you, get your tickets today. But the others, we have plenty of seats on the other nights, including on Halloween, which is going to be, I think a very special night.
And that late show on Halloween is always a real doozy. And, if you happen to be there at the late show, we always wind up going to the library, the bar upstairs at the Public Theater, following that final show, and we would love to meet you. And we meet people after each show anyway, but, we can have a drink together and raise a glass. So on that note, Greg, we will waltz away, but thank you for joining us on this side streets that took us to Paris and back. And thank you for your continued support of the Bowery Boys podcast. Because of you, we're able to do this job and make the show full time. It's really your support that makes that possible. So thank you.
And if you have any topic suggestions for us for the fall and winter, send them along. And we're putting together a list and planning out for the end of the year. So please let us know. So thank you very much for listening, and have a great New York week, whether you live here or not.
See you real soon. Bye-bye.